Hello everybody, welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and today we're going to be doing an overview of what I think will be a couple of new meta innovations in the preseason for the Jungle and ADC, and then I'm going to also give a quick overview of a lot of the changes they've made to the support items since the last video that I made, and then we'll talk about some changes that they're making to some of the other items as well over the next little bit. But if you enjoy this content, please be sure to like and subscribe. It really helps out a ton on the channel. We stream every night starting around midnight Eastern Standard Time. Usually go till about 4 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, only on YouTube. And we do tons and tons of videos like this all the time. So check out the rest of the content on the channel as well. And about every couple of weeks up until the preseason, I'll give you an update on the stuff that's changing on the PvE, just so you can kind of see what's coming on down the line. And then, of course, once the preseason itself drops, I'll do all sorts of updated tier list, items analysis, just all the analysis you could ever want for the preseason. I'll have you covered. Okay, but let's go ahead and get in here. So these are some things. I just want to start off with these meta innovations here that I was just thinking about as I was reading through these items and, you know, just playing and talking through different things and answering questions on the stream. There are a couple of things that may or may not get nerfed before the preseason, but this would give you a huge edge on everybody else if you can figure this out early. So the number one thing that I think is probably going to be going on in the preseason that's OP, and this is almost certainly going to get nerfed before the pro starts next season, and this is the way that I'm reading it, and correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but the new thing that they're doing with the jungle items, let me see if we can come across one of them here, is that you keep it in your inventory, and then after you use 5 smites, then it disappears out of your inventory, and you get the power of one of the smites, either the chilling smite or the on-hit smite. And I forgot what they're calling these different items now, so I'll keep scrolling until I find one. But basically, you smite 5 times, it disappears out of your inventory. Here we go, Nettle Blade. So this one's for Immolating Smite, which is Challenging Smite right now. So it's 350 to buy, just like normal. You can no longer buy Skirmisher Saber, and you can no longer buy like Warriors or anything like that. It's just this. And then after you smite 5 times, it consumes this item, so the item no longer exists, but you just get Immolating Smite permanently and all of the other stuff, the Tooth and Nail passive, the 8% Omni Vamp, all that stuff. Now, how long would this take? Well, if you smite immediately on your first camp, or you use your smites before the charges fill up, then I believe you can fill this up by 6 minutes and get it to transform. Why is this significant? Well, it opens up an extra item slot, which is what most people are going to notice. Like, okay, you can hold more items. You can. This is especially good for champions that don't like to upgrade their item anyways, and they get to keep all the benefits of like the Skirmisher Saber without having to purchase it. So Ivern comes to mind immediately as someone who doesn't want to upgrade, and then you've also got Rengar typically doesn't like to upgrade, and some other junglers have been going that direction too, like Hecarim, all that kind of stuff. Well, that's kind of first level things that I'm sure a lot of junglers are thinking about and talking about. And the thing that I think a lot of people are not talking about is that you can get a support item now at about 6 minutes and get that thing stacked up probably around 10 minutes in, so around 15 minutes into the game, 15 or 16 minutes of the game, and you can get the support wards, right? So you can get those 3 wards, which will also allow you to open up and get the new Ixtali item as well, which increases your wards further, gives you additional spell haste, or ability haste, and a bunch of other things as well. Lets you place extra control wards, because right now, and they changed this so that junglers would not get the warding item. First of all, they got rid of Tracker's Knife, so junglers couldn't upgrade their Skirmisher Saber into anything that gives wards. And then some junglers were getting the support items so they could get the wards, and they got rid of that. But how they dealt with that was, if you had a jungle item in your inventory, then you could not buy a support item, so you could not have both at the same time. Well, now what happens if there's no longer a jungle item in your inventory? Right? So they might patch this and say, if you get this upgrade, right, if you have this Ashen Path, you can no longer purchase a support item. I don't know if they're going to do that or not. Or maybe they think it's not going to be too OP because your wards are going to be late, right? Your wards aren't going to come in until 15 or 16 minutes in the game. And that's still extremely strong, right? And those support items are very, very cost efficient, remember, because a few seasons back, you didn't have to pay any money to upgrade the support items anymore. So now you can just pay 400 gold and get all the various benefits. You get the wards, but then you also get like the 300 health or whatever off of Relic Shield. And they generate a lot of extra gold for you. You get an extra 1,000 gold off of them to begin with. So they're super cost efficient. Everybody knows that. That's why they ran them out of the solo lanes. That's when you had like your Sorakas and your Jannas, your Karmas, and all that stuff going on in the top lane. They nerfed that out. So they're trying every way they can to help the junglers and the supports get a little bit of extra gold, but they don't want people who are getting a lot of gold, the solo laners, to use these items. Well, now they've potentially broken it because they're going to allow the junglers to get the jungler bonus gold, right, by not having to upgrade your Hunter's Talisman, and also get the support bonuses with the gold. So this is going to be very good, especially for champions that don't have to have a ton of combat early. I mean, it's not a huge investment. It's only 400 gold to get the support item, so it's not like it's that big of a deal. But especially champions that really leverage the vision very well and operate on a really low gold economy and can accelerate really fast by getting this extra stuff. I think this is going to be huge, especially champions that want to play defense, that don't want to be the ones getting caught out, right? So where vision, they like a nice, clear, open vision maps that favors team fighting, that favors more utility tank type of champions, because it's going to be a lot harder to assassinate people because there's way more wards on the map all the time. So I think this kind of thing is going to hurt your Kha'Zixes, your Rengars, just any of those champions that rely on sneaking around doing stuff, and it's going to hurt assassins in the mid and the top lane. So everyone, you know, who's thinking like, oh, assassins are going to take over, they got all these crazy new items and all this stuff like that, it's like, well, maybe, but if this goes through and people figure this out, and pro players will figure this out, or challengers will figure this stuff out eventually. I haven't heard anyone else say this. There might be other people talking about this out there, but people will eventually get on the bandwagon with this. If they don't change it, and that's going to make it a lot harder for assassins to take over the game, and it's going to extend game timers too, because it's going to be a lot harder to make plays. So your game timer is probably going to go from 25 to 30 minutes. That's going to favor ADCs or other like scaling type of champions a bit more. It's probably going to favor enchanters a bit more because they scale. So I think that this could definitely be a huge disruption to the meta, and I would like to see it, honestly. I hate assassins. You know, I like tanks. I like enchanters. And this would definitely make ADCs a lot more relevant if they have this vision. But we'll see. Like I said, their theory overall has been take away vision. Do not let the junglers have a lot of vision. So maybe they nerf this, or maybe they find some other way to combat this, lower the cooldown on sweepers so people can sweep more and try to get it out of there. They also have nerfed Umbral Glaive, which not a lot of junglers got this. Sometimes you would get this, especially in Pro. It was 2,400 gold, now it's 2,800. So that's going to be a lot harder for people to clear that vision out. The people who did get this is obviously going to hurt like Pyke support and Senna support and any other kind of AD support that wants this. Like I said, most junglers weren't getting this, but in Pro some of them were. So that's going to hurt vision a little bit too. But I think that's going to be one of the biggest meta innovations if they don't change this. Once people figure it out, is that you can buy a jungle item and get your Relic Shield completed. That should say 16 minutes. I think you can get it in 15 or 16 minutes, because they are also increasing how fast you can charge up your all of the utility items, all of the support items, to get your wards faster. So Relic Shield is one of them, but then they are also increasing, if you want to go for a Shard of True Ice, you could do that as an AP jungler, or you could do whatever the other one is. I'm blanking out. The AD one, you could also do that. So I think that would be pretty good. Obviously, Lee Sin's going to like that as well, being able to get all of his wards back and be able to get a sweeper, because right now he just has to rely on keeping the wards in his trinket slot, and he can't get a sweeper, which hurts his vision control. But now he can do this, and he's going to be able to get the Extali, which is going to give him even more wards. So that's partially why I think they have the Extali to where you need to do you need to place 20 wards before you can upgrade it, or before you can even purchase it. Or no, it's for the upgrades. You can purchase it anytime, but they were probably doing this because they did not want junglers to be able to get the Extali to place more control wards. So they had that little oversight where By the time you're level 13, you're already going to have your wards ready if you go for the Relic Shield or Shard of True Ice or whatever, and then you can just place 20 wards pretty quickly and upgrade it. So I suspect they had this initially in here to keep it away from junglers, but it's not going to work unless they change what I'm talking about here. Or no, it says, okay, so you could buy Relic Shield or whichever one you want, Frostfang, by 6 minutes and get it charged up, I said, by 8 minutes or so. So probably 16. I think you could charge it up in 10 minutes with how fast it's going. So great for Ivern, Gleason, Nunu, other type of support sort of champions. Going to be a little bit rougher for assassins. So that's the first thing that I think is going on here. It's going to be a really cool meta innovation to keep your eye on. I think it's cool. Once again, I think Riot's going to nerf it because they just don't want that much vision, but take advantage of it while you can. And then the next one that I've been thinking a lot about, like ADCs and how they're going to build up stuff. They did change around a couple of ADC items, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. But the big one, I believe, from what I've noticed here, and I didn't quite process the implications of this when I did my ADC overview video before, and I haven't seen a lot of other people talking about this either. Everyone's like, oh, ADC's dead in the water. Assassins are OP. It's like, well, one new thing about the Gensu is that it doesn't appear to have a timer on it, on that third hit. Okay, so if you're familiar with playing things like Jax or just other stuff where you can build up that third hit, that really big hit to do a lot of damage, I think this is similar, right? Because remember, you don't have to charge this up by landing like 6 consecutive auto attacks in order to activate this. It always works. The Gensu's Chaos always works. You don't have to prep this on minions as much before you get all that damage. You always get the third hit does this extra damage. Well, that means you can store this up to get a massive third hit, right? So you could just walk up, auto attack like a jungle camp a couple of times, or even the minions in the lane, attack it a couple of times, hold on to that third attack, and then the third attack is going to trigger all of your on-hit abilities twice. Well, what if you combine this with something like Storm Razor or Rapid Fire Cannon, right? So let's say that you're at 0 charges on your Energized, and then you just auto attack the minion, or like auto attack some monsters twice, and then just run around until you get your fully charged Energizer hit, and then you get to double proc it for the Energized hit. Or what about the Kraken? I don't think the Kraken also has any sort of timer on it. Based on what I see, every third attack, it does not say it has to be against the same target, right? Neither one of these says it has to be against the same target. So it could be the same thing. You attack twice, you wait on you run around, you wait on your Energizer to proc all the way up, and then you just roll up on somebody, especially if you have Rapid Fire Cannon and you get that extra range. You just roll up on somebody and you just pop them, right? And it's going to do, if you just have, and it double procs Gensu's itself for the extra damage as well. So if you just have the Gensu's normally, it's going to do 100 on-hit damage, physical on-hit damage if you have Gensu's plus Storm Razor, just 2 items, right? And then you double proc that, it's going to be 440. If you have Kraken on top of that, so if you have 3 items, Gensu's is actually going to do more if you do that. Gensu's would actually do 150, because you get 50 extra physical bonus on hit damage. We'll talk about, they changed Gensu's basically to where instead of doing magic damage, 40 extra magic damage on hit, it does 50 physical damage on hit for every 20% crit that you have. So this would actually add an extra 100 damage onto this. That'd be 540 if you have Kraken, then Gensu's, then Storm Razor, 3-item combo. Your Kraken's going to hit for, it's actually going to be more than 250 true damage, but it'll be close, right? Because it's going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of, if you have Storm Razor to go with it, it's going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of probably like 150. So that's 300 true damage on top of that, which can, so it'll be 100, but it double procs off of the Gensu's, so that'll be 300. So you can basically crack somebody for somewhere in the neighborhood of like 550 upfront burst. Now that's just the bonus damage. That's not your normal auto attack damage, right? Your normal auto attack damage is going to add like 200 onto this. You can't crit anymore if you have Gensu's. But your normal auto attack damage is probably still going to be at least 150 to 200 at this point. So you can add that on there too. So it's going to be like 550 plus an extra you know, 150 or something on top of that, depending on your total AD at the time. So that's going to be like 700 upfront damage, and then you're going to have whatever it is, 300 true damage on top of that. So it's going to be like 1,000 damage, and 300 of it's going to be true damage. So I mean, we're talking almost literal one shot of a squishy champion when that goes on, if you set that up. And remember, there's no timer on that. It's not that hard to do. All you have to do is just auto attack like some minions or something twice, and then hold on to your third hit until your Energizer stuff is charged, and then boom, you just crack people for just this massive damage, right? So it's like, who needs critical strike if you basically have a 100% guaranteed, like, insanely massive crit, like, in quotes, right? So I think that's going to be disgusting, and each one of these things is, like, powerful in and of itself. Kraken is already super strong. And this does, it's not just the burst damage too, this does really, really high sustained damage. And the Kraken can actually trigger against towers as well. So just imagine hitting a tower for like 300 true damage. I mean, that's basically a plate immediately off a Kraken. So it does really high sustained damage if you have lethal tempo and things like that. And there's no like cooldown on this, right? So like you can do this a lot. I mean, you have to, like, your Energizer stuff has to charge up, but this can happen multiple times in a fight. So it's just going to be huge. And you would just start off going Kraken, and then I think you probably go Ginsu's after that. The Ginsu's plus Kraken combo is just so strong. And then you would go for Stormrazor after that, I believe. So Stormrazor, the thing is, and I talked about this a lot with, and we'll move on to the support stuff here in just a second. They took away a lot of the cheap items off of Stormrazor, or off of the ADC roster, right? So they got rid of Static Shiv, they got rid of Hurricane. Basically, they made it a 3,400 gold item, which is too expensive, I think, most of the time. For a Zeal type of items. All you have left is Rapid Fire and Stormrazor, and those are 2,700 gold. And a lot of the other like big ticket items are going to be like 3,000 plus gold, and that's just too much money. You can't try to buy like 3,200 gold items. You're just not going to be able to afford it in a lot of games. So you have to have that sort of mid-tier item, that thing that's around like 2,500 to 2,700. And so I think that has to be Stormrazor. So it might be that you buy Kraken first and then you buy Stormrazor. But Ginsu's is 3,000 and it adds so much extra value that you'll probably go Kraken into Ginsu's, I think, a lot of times. But either way, once you start getting these things combined, it's just going to be a ton of damage. So I think that's going to be the meta. I think those are going to be a lot of the really strong champs. So Twitch comes to mind as being very strong with this, because obviously he can sneak up on people with his invisibility, pop his ult, and then, just delete people off of this. Another thing with the Mura mana, you can also charge up your Mura mana starting early, and we'll talk about that here in a second too and get to the ADC items. But you can proc that, and that would give you some extra physical damage as well. But yeah, I think that's going to be it. So I think a lot of people are going to go away from kind of your traditional crit builds with Infinity Edge. You might still see some of that. The thing is, Infinity Edge has a lot of AD on it, has 80 AD, and a lot of the other items, their raw AD is being nerfed quite a bit. So like the new Stormrazor only has 35 on it, for example. So that's going to be kind of awkward for a lot of ADCs out there. But someone like Vayne comes to mind, who really wants the attack speed. Twitch comes to mind, who really wants the attack speed. And I had talked about Blade the Ruined King as well. I don't think people are actually going to go for that, though. Like, I think that it is potentially, like, still pretty good, but the problem is Ginsu's just so strong. I think with these changes, especially with Kraken, and especially being able to reliably proc, because you could do this before with Stormrazor plus Ginsu's, but it's like you just really wouldn't ever want to, because Stormrazor was for like crits, and it was really hard to line up, because Ginsu's, you had to hit something, I think, 6 times before you got the Ginsu's Rage online, so you couldn't store it up. If you ever fell out of combat, you would lose your stacks. So you could not set it up like this before, but now you can, because there's no timer. So that's the difference. That's why Stormrazor plus Ginsu's now, or Stormrazor plus, or Ginsu's plus Rapid Fire right now, looks really OP, whereas it wasn't before. And you might totally get Rapid Fire instead of Stormrazor. Storm Razor has the AD on it, but Rapid Fire does have more attack speed, and it does have the movement speed, and it has the long range, right? So it does the same damage, and it has the long range. It just doesn't have the raw AD. But maybe the attack speed is actually more valuable, right? If you're thinking about getting as many Kraken triggers as possible. And that range actually would allow you to trigger your Kraken on towers. I just thought of that. Wow, it's pretty disgusting. I don't remember if this bonus damage applies to towers or not. I think it does. But yeah, that could actually be pretty ridiculously OP if you charge up the 2 hits, and then you have your 3rd hit for the Kraken, which can apply to structures, and you walk up with Rapid Fire and just crack the tower, you know, for like 400 true damage, then back up. Like, maybe you take 1 tower shot. If you do that, or I mean, even when the minions are coming up, you just charge it up, bam. So yeah, maybe Rapid Fire is the better way to go. Just because the range and how that works with Kraken could be super OP. But anyways, I think that's what the meta is going to be. It's going to be some combination of these Kerchise items, these energized items, and then you combine that with Kraken plus Gensu's, and I think that's going to be the ADC meta. That's going to be the best thing. So Caitlyn might be kind of good with those as well. It's kind of weird not to have crit with Caitlyn, but anything that's like super long range that can make great use of these things. So like Caitlyn, Senna, probably. Rapid Fire is a little weird on Senna. Kraken's not very good at all on Senna though, with the attack speed. I guess you could get something other than Kraken on her, but who else would be good with this? Twitch, already mentioned Twitch is probably pretty good. Even something like Vayne, just because she attacks so fast. And if you get the 3rd hit with the Silver Bolts, you can't charge up the Silver Bolts like that. It has to be 3 consecutive attacks on the same target. But if you get the 3rd hit there with that huge true damage, that'd be massive as well. But yeah, I think that this will be very, very strong. And that's pretty much what everybody's going to be doing unless they nerf this. And they actually buffed Kraken on this patch to do a little bit more damage, so it's pretty gross. Ashe is another one. That's who I meant to talk about. Now, I don't know how the crit changes work with Ashe. I assume it's going to disable that, because right now Ashe gets 20%, like the way that her passive works is like she gets 20% extra damage from the critical strike that you have. But Gensu's Gensu's does not allow you to crit and converts it over to on hit, but it doesn't take away the critical strike stat. It just means that you can't crit. So Ashe might still get the benefit from the critical strike bonus on her passive and get the benefit from Gensu. So that might make Ashe the most OP person with this build, because you're getting a lot of extra damage for free pretty much with her passive. So keep an eye on that, but yeah, that could be super strong. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about the support stuff here really quick. I know that's what a lot of people are probably going to be, you know, most interested on my channel. But I just wanted to share kind of the 2 most sort of OP things I think that are going on, like early on in the preseason. If they don't nerf these things, do these for free low immediately, like right when the season comes out, and see how long it takes for other content creators to figure this out too. Anyways, so support items, I got some bad news after looking at the PBE items over the last week, and I can't get in there right now. They disabled the practice tool, and you can't even play bots. They just updated it a little bit ago, so I'm just going off of the wiki over here. But they changed a lot of stuff that's really bad news bears for supports. Like, they are nerfing enchanters, like, pretty hard. And, you know, we all knew it, and I talked about it last time. They were going to nerf some of these things, but I didn't think they were going to nerf everything this much. So there's still some really good stuff there, but there's a lot of nerfs on some of these things. And some of these are like low-key nerfs, and other content creators just never mention this stuff because nobody ever cares about support. But some of these are a pretty big deal. So the Fairy Charm, let's start with kind of the components, and we'll talk about some of the bigger ticket items. But the components are really important because some of the biggest strengths of Enchanter supports is they had really good sort of piecemeal itemization. So you could get a whole bunch of small, little powerful items on your backs. That means you had a lot of freedom on your back timings to go refill your wards, to roam, you know, just to adapt to a lot of different situations, because all of your components were so cheap and they were so powerful and effective. And that gave you really good tempo a lot of times, which is extremely important. Watch some of my other guide videos if you want to know how important tempo is. But that was very nice. Well, now they've changed Fairy Charm to where it's a 250 gold item, It still does the same thing. It's 50% mana per 5. So basically you have to buy 2 fairy charms at a time now. You can't just buy 1, which kind of sucks because that was a really nice thing that a lot of things built out of fairy charms. And if you just had an extra, 200 gold laying around, let's say that you bought a ruby crystal or something and you had 200 extra gold, you could just buy a fairy charm and a control ward and call it a day. Well, now you can't do that. You have to choose. You may not even be able to buy the fairy charm if you don't have 250, and you may not have enough to get a fairy charm and a control ward. So this is going to set up a lot of really awkward back timings and strange situations early on as people try to get used to this. And I just think that that's going to hurt one of the biggest strengths of enchanters, which is their early itemization. So it's like, can you still deal with it? Yeah, you can deal with it, but it's going to make it a lot harder and a lot more awkward when you're backing with that, typical like 500 to 600 gold extra type of range. It's going to put you in some weird situations. So I think that's a pretty low-key nerf that a lot of people are not going to notice, but it's a big deal. And then Forbidden Idol, I think this one's a huge one. They're taking away the CDR, ability haste, as it's called now. And they're giving it plus 5% healing and shielding. But still, that's not worth it, right? And they've changed Forbidden Idol a lot over the years because it is such a powerful item. But once again, that's one of the main appeals of enchanters, right? It's like you suck early, your stats are terrible, you have really weak armor, really weak health, you're very vulnerable to all ends, you're usually pretty vulnerable to ganks on a lot of enchanters, except for Janna, and Rakan if you call him an enchanter. But yeah, you're weak early, so the thing is you're supposed to have pretty powerful items and powerful stats so you can kind of scale up and get past that weakness if you can play safely through the early game. But this is bad, right? Because now it only gives you 50% mana regen and plus 10% healing and shielding. So, your first time that you ultimate, usually you can get one of these before you cast your first ult. So your first ult's going to be, 10% slower. Your second one, I guess, is going to be 10% slower because you're not going to have the 10% CDR for your first ult. So it's just rough. I don't think that's worth it. I mean, having the plus healing and shielding power, the 5 extra, that is very nice. That's good. But I think that the CDR is much, much more important, especially early on a lot of enchanters, particularly the ones that don't have great healing and shielding, like Lulu, right? Her ult doesn't scale with plus healing and shielding. Her E does, and that's all good. But you'd much, much rather have the CDR. So I think that's a pretty decent nerf that people are going to feel when you're building it. And then Ardent Censor actually got low-key, pretty hard nerfed as well, if you look at this now. So it costs the same amount of gold. It has the exact same passive. They just took away, just straight up, just jack the 8% movement speed, so that's gone. That's very, very valuable on a lot of champions that want that item. And they're taking away the CDR on this as well. So now all that it has is 60 ability power, plus 10% healing and shielding, and they gave it 50% more mana regeneration, which is okay, I guess. And, on paper, 50% mana regen is about the same price as 10% CDR, give or take 20 gold. But it's not worth it. The CDR is so much more valuable than the mana regen, right? You really, really want that on enchanters because you have to have your spells because your base stats are terrible. So that's pretty bad. So is it still a good item? Yeah, it's a good item. You're still going to get it on Lulu. You're still going to get it on Janna. But that's going to feel a lot weaker. I mean, losing the movement speed and the CDR on it is going to feel really bad. Especially because at the start of this last season, they took away the CDR from your support items. So now you're losing a ton of CDR. Or spell haste, as they're calling it now. And the Staff of Flowing Water also got some pretty substantial nerfs. Now, this should not be a surprise to anybody. I was talking about how this item was mega OP, and I did not think it was going to make it to the live servers before they nerfed it, and I was right. But they're going after the base stats on this rather than the passive. So what they're doing here is it's 200 extra gold, so it's no longer 2100. Basically, all of the support items, the enchanter items, are 200 extra gold. They're all 2300, which is a lot for enchanters. On a budget, that's a very, very big deal. And and then it's losing 5% of the healing and shielding that it, said it was going to have on the last PvE version. So it's losing 5% plus healing and shielding, and it's losing 50% of its mana per 5. So it was going to have 150% base mana regen, and then 10% plus healing and shielding. So they just took all of that away and made it cost 200 more gold. So you're losing, 450 gold there, and then plus healing and shielding, I think, is about 55 gold now in terms of its overall value. So you're losing like 500 gold worth of base value off of this. So is it still strong? Yeah, it's good. It still has, actually, hold on. 15, okay, yeah, it was always 15% bonus movement speed, I think. I was thinking it was 30 for a second, but it was always 15. And then the 30 ability power. So yes, it is still very strong in the right situation. And this will still be something that you want to get. But personally for you, you're giving up a lot. So is that probably a decent way to balance it, that you personally are a lot weaker for an item that gives a ton of value to your team? It probably is. And, with Ardent Sensors, same deal. It's extremely powerful for your team, so they want you to be a lot weaker personally. That's a fair way to do it, but you just got to be careful. It's going to be tough out there. I mean, I guess at least they're not hitting your survivability. They're just kind of hitting your utility. But those are still like substantial nerfs. Mikhail's also very big nerf from what they were saying on the last PvE. So 200 more gold, just like all of the other items. They actually are taking off 10 plus healing and shielding, which is a ton because they were previewing it as having 30% plus healing and shielding. So it's back down to 20. It's minus 50% mana per 5. So it was previewing at 150%. Now it's back down to 100%. It's losing the 200 HP on it, so that's rough. But they're giving it 50 magic resist. So the 50 magic resist is almost 1,000 gold worth of magic resist, and you're losing like 500 gold worth of health. So against magic damage champion, this is actually a winner in terms of survivability. But once again, the extra gold, the loss of the healing, the loss of the mana per 5 is a big deal. And I did see that it is still coded to not take away suppressions and still doesn't take away knockups. They've talked about taking away knockups, or at least tenacity being able to reduce knockups, but they haven't done that yet. But it does not cleanse suppression, so it will not get you out of a Mordekaiser ult. It will not get rid of a Skarner ult or a Warwick ult or anything like that that has a suppression. So that's important. And then this is probably one of the largest nerfs right here is to redemption, and this is one that once again a lot of other content creators are not going to talk about, but I only noticed this when I was sort of flipping through the items before. First of all, costs the 200 more, has 50% less mana per 5, 50% less HP per 5. I think we talked about that last time, but it no longer has the 3x multiplier on your plus healing and shielding. The old one, it tripled your plus healing and shielding. So if you had 20% plus healing and shielding, the healing off of the redemption active would be 60%. So that made it hit pretty hard when you had a lot of other plus healing and shielding items. But now it no longer has that. So it's a massive nerf. Yes, they did give it more plus healing and shielding. They gave it its 20% total plus healing and shielding instead of... let me see, plus 10%, and let's call this H+. So now it is baseline 20% healing and shielding, but that still doesn't make up for it, it's a lot, right? I mean, even this item by itself, if you just rushed redemption and used it on just you and 3 allies in a fight or whatever, it would heal for 30% extra on it. So it's a lot weaker. I don't think anyone's ever going to get this item anymore. I mean, maybe in pro play, maybe, but it's really dicey, right? You can miss, people can run out of it, especially in solo queue. It misses, a decent chunk of the time. People run out of it, people don't get it. It can be reduced by grievous wounds. It already is very sketchy in terms of its stats. It's really, really weak whenever you don't have the active going. So, yeah, I think that's probably the end for redemption. I just think that you're just always going to get something else. Maybe there might be some situations, but I think the vast majority of the time you're either going to go Ardent Sensor, Flowing Water, or Mikhail's instead of redemption. just because it's already like a high risk, high reward item, and you're getting way less reward. So I think that's going to be it for that. Okay, so Bulwark, and they're doing this across the board with a lot of support items. It does, it has less final stats, but it charges up faster, which once again is going to lend itself to jungle abuse, like we mentioned earlier. But top end supports are getting nerfed there, right? So you're losing 5 AP and 50 HP on Bulwark. So all of them are getting nerfed, including Shard of True Ice. Shard of True Ice is losing 10 AP and 25 HP. But you get a charge every 10 seconds, or you get a charge every 35 seconds instead of 45 seconds. And on Shard of True Ice, each charge is going to give you 20 gold instead of 15 gold. So you can fill it up faster. So you're going to get your wards faster, but then once you get to that tier 4, you're going to be losing like 225 gold value or something, just kind of eyeballing it. It's going to be somewhere in that neighborhood, 225 to 250. So it's going to be substantial. So overall, you know, when you add all of this up, if you're thinking, we'll talk about the mythics here really quick too. So we have Umbral Glaive, talked about that. That's one of the biggest nerfs, like 400 gold on a support item. It's just gross. And all you get is 5% extra CDR equivalency for that. That's brutal. So, you know, Pike is just getting massacred here because of that. And then Zeke's is interesting. They actually buffed Zeke's a little bit from last time. Remember, they pretty much gutted Knight's Vow as far as I'm concerned, unless there's something that I don't understand about that. Zeke's now has an AP ratio. So remember, it does something like between 30 to 50 on-hit damage. Basically, whenever you immobilize a target, I can pull it up here. Whenever you immobilize a target, it deals 25 to 50 on-hit damage for the next 4 seconds. So whenever your accomplice, so your partner, deals damage to that person for 4 seconds, they're taking extra damage. And it did have a 1.25 max health. So if you have 2,000 max health, you would get an extra 25 damage. So now it's 1.5, so you're going to do 30 damage instead. So, you know, kind of in the mid to late game, you might be giving them 70 extra on-hit damage. Now, it is worth noting in a meta that I think is going to be highly dominated by that new Ginsu's that can double proc. So every third hit can double proc them on that. And it can happen immediately with that double proc too, right? If they have that all charged up, like we were talking about, they're walking up with their rapid fire cannon. You jump on them with Leona. It's Twitch, who's cloaked. He pops out of invisibility and auto attacks him once when this is going for that huge third Ginsu's hit. Then this would proc immediately, so that would be 150 extra damage in that type of scenario. So that is significant. But so now it's 30 extra damage every, you know, for 2,000 health instead of 20. Okay. But then it has a 0.75 AP ratio. So if you are a support that has like 200 AP, so if you have like Staff of Flowing Water and Ardent Censer, then that would give an extra 15 AP or extra 15 on-hit damage. So that's okay. I think people will get it. It is nice they're making a gesture towards AP supports. That would be very good on like Rakan, for example, if he wants that. So decent little item, especially considering they've nerfed the other one so hard. This might actually be something that you would want to get as a defensive item, you know, on something like a just anyone that has immobilization. So like Lulu, you know, her knockup with her ult, her polymorph can both trigger it. Rakan can obviously trigger it. Now, any enemy that gets hit, now only your partner can hit them, but and its abilities too. Right now, I'm assuming it doesn't say it here, but there probably is some kind of cooldown, right? Your accomplice's attacks on hit and abilities do that much bonus damage to the enemy. I'm just wondering, like, I assume it does not apply to dots, but like, what if you make your accomplice rumble and he, like, you engage with a Malphite and knock up like 4 people or something, and then rumble, like, you know, rolls in with a flamethrower which checks every like 0.25 seconds. I'm sure there's some kind of internal cooldown, like this can only happen like once every second or something like that. But since abilities trigger it too, it's just interesting with mages, right? If you like make some kind of mage your accomplice and then you just keep hitting them with a lot of AoE abilities, then I'm not exactly sure how that's good. So that could be really OP if that's an oversight that they haven't included here. But anyways, decent item. Could be really OP under some of those circumstances I mentioned. And since they nerfed the other stuff, it's going to make this look a little bit better by comparison. Okay, so let's see here. Imperial Mandate is a new item that they're adding in. So it's 40 extra AP, 200 HP, 25% ability haste, and 100% MP5s. That's 2,200 gold value for 2,700. So inefficient, just like a lot of the items, but it has a really powerful active. CC deals an extra 100 to or 60 to 100 bonus damage, and triggers an extra 60 to 100 bonus damage and 30% movement speed for 2 seconds when your ally procs it. So this can be a slow or an immobilizing effect. Zeke's has to be an immobilizing effect, so it doesn't work with like a Janna W, for example. And this has a 6-second cooldown per champ, and that's what I'm wondering, like, I don't know why it says abilities. Maybe it's just once per ability. Maybe that's how they do it. So like if you flame spitter with Rumble or something, it can trigger once per flame spitter. That's probably how they have it coded. But anyways, on Cassiopeia, that could be really, really good. And if they have like magic pen or something like that, the fact that it's magic damage could be relevant too. So that could be an interesting build, you know, if you have like a Cassiopeia bottom and you go Staff of Flowing Water and then Zeke's Convergence or something like that on some types of supports. But anyways, it's pretty good. So this adds in like a good chunk of like steady sustained damage, and that's 6 seconds per champ, so you could proc this on multiple champs. So it's a pretty high damage ability that doesn't require a big active, that just always kind of works, and has a decent little assortment of different stats. So I'm not entirely sure who would use this. It's a similar stat line to like Moonstone, I guess. In fact, I think it's almost the exact same stat line as Moonstone, which they did buff a lot, by the way, because it was trash before it was buffed. I know people were telling me, but it's good, TSP. It's like, it was okay, but it's just base stats were awful. And we'll just talk about it here in a second. They gave it an insanely huge buff to Moonstone, which maybe that's why they nerfed the other things. But I'm not sure. Like, you know, Janna would probably like this quite a bit. It's like, do you want this more than Shirelia's, though? They did lower the cost on Shirelia's to 2,500, and they gave it 50 extra HP. So maybe, or just anything else that has AP that can like do a bunch of slows. Maybe Nami or something. You have to be the one that slows them, though. You have to be the one, yeah, that applies the slow. So I don't know. It's decent. It's competing with some of these other items, but if you want the big AP item, you don't want Moonstone. You want something that's a little bit more aggressive, that can apply some slows. I guess Lulu, you have a multi-target slows that does apply to each enemy champ. So if you use a Q and you hit like 3 or 4 people with your Lulu Q, it would apply a slow to all of them. And that would allow for this extra damage. So that's pretty big, actually. Like, Lulu might be the best one who would want something like this. So yeah, I think it'll definitely be good in some situations. The extra movement speed's obviously a big deal too. Then you have Shirelia's, lower the cost on it, added extra HP. So this is 2,700. Shirelia's is 2,500, which I still think is going to be a very strong item. Locket is 2,700 now, nothing else changed. And then Moonstone just got a massive buff. So they gave it Moonstone Renewer. They gave it 40 extra ability power. It did not used to have any ability power on it whatsoever. So that's like 900 gold worth of free stats. And they gave it 50 extra HP, which is another 100 gold. So they gave it 1,000 gold worth of free stats. And it used to only do up to 100% extra healing off of the passive. Now it does 150% extra healing off the passive. So big buffs. So if on average this is, let's just call it 50 for easy math. Once this gets fully charged up over 4 seconds, then this can go up to, what, 125 healing. So that's pretty good. That's pretty good. Now, one thing I was overlooking, and I'll have to see, like, you have to be in combat. Now, I don't know if they have to be in combat or if you have to be in combat for this to work. Because it says, when affecting enemy champions with attacks or abilities in combat, you heal them. Because I was just thinking about poke, right? So, and I assume this does not apply to you personally, right? Or there might be, like, mid laners that would take something like this, potentially. But if you're getting poked or something, like, I'm just thinking if the enemy's in combat, right? So if, like, the Xerath hits your AD carry and then you shield your AD carry, would that heal you? Or would that heal them or not? I don't think so unless you're hit. Now, if you shield somebody who's in combat, I was looking that up. Does that count as being in combat yourself? I don't think so. I think you have to either take damage or, like, you either have to give damage or receive damage in order to be counted as in combat, and it lasts for 5 seconds. So I don't think it's going to be that great against poke because you can't heal yourself with it, and you can't heal an enemy unless you're both hit. If you both get hit by Xerath, then you could heal them, I think. But nevertheless, I think this could be pretty good on poke champions where you're poking them and you get to heal up your allies, especially if you can spam poke. So, like, Lux is pretty good, but her E's kind of on a long cooldown, so I don't know what the spam, like, I don't remember Vel'Koz's Q cooldown. I mean, you can spam, like, Soraka Qs at a certain point, but that's, you know, dangerous because you have to get kind of close. So, I don't know. I think it can be pretty good. I think it'll be pretty good if you're going to get a lot of plus healing and shielding, but once again, they nerfed a lot of that, right? So, they nerfed a lot off of Mikhail's, and they nerfed it off of Staff of Flowing Water. And a lot of these items, you know, they're losing a lot of their utility early on, and they're more expensive. So it's like, how many plus healing and shielding items are you going to get? And you don't have nearly as much scaling with redemption either with plus healing and shielding. So I don't know. I still feel like it's going to be relatively underpowered in a lot of situations. Obviously, someone like a Soraka is really going to like this. So if you have a bunch of tanks on your team, if you can stay in combat for a long period of time, like at least 10 seconds or something, it'll be good. But otherwise, I still feel like Locket's going to be better if you want the damage mitigation, even with the little bit of extra cost. Or, you know, if you want more damage with Imperial Mandate, or you want the Shurelya's for the extra aggression, I think those will probably be more likely. But maybe the Moonstone Renewer in longer combat situations would be good. Ivern would really love something like this. Something that really wants a lot of the CDR, and Ivern desperately wants the CDR because of his Daisy. He needs Daisy, and she's a very long cooldown. Soraka would really like this because of the huge CDR. Now, they all have the 25% CDR, I believe. Basically, or 25% ability haste, which is the equivalent of 20% CDR. But anyways, so it's kind of bad news for enchanters. Now, that's good news if you like tanks, because then enchanters aren't going to run away with it. And Imperial Mandate, I guess on some AP tanks, that's just so weird because that's like a tank type of thing. CC doing extra damage, but then it's got an AP ratio on it. So I don't know, but the Zeke's buff's interesting. But yeah, overall, it's pretty bad news bears for supports, especially enchanter supports. I do think they'll still be good. I do think they'll still be viable, but it's going to be a lot rougher. You can go for the Ardent and the Staff of Flowing Water, you know, on someone like a Janna maybe, but you're losing a lot of personal effectiveness. Yeah, it's going to be tough out there. Okay, ADCs, I mentioned this before, and I don't want this to be over an hour. But the Ginsus, they are making it physical on-hit damage, and they're adding plus 10 on-hit. So now it's 50 on-hit for every 20% crit. So it's going to make it easier for the enemy to buy armor to counter you now. But it also does make armor penetration a lot more valuable. So it just kind of depends. It's a trade-off. So you probably don't want to get a lot of armor pen because you want those three kind of core items that I mentioned before, kind of the Ginsus, Kraken, and probably Rapid Fire to go with that, maybe Storm Razor. So you really don't want to get the armor pen if you don't have to, but You could get the little, I think that they made, I can't remember if they made Last Whisper better. Let me see. No, it's literally the same thing. So I don't know. But anyways, this is overall. I think it's probably good if you have an all AD team. You know, maybe that's more annoying, but I think getting the extra 10 on hit is probably worth, as long as you don't have an all AD team. Okay, and then Kraken is. They buffed that a little bit. I still think that's going to be the go-to, like super powerful mythic that most people are going to want. Now, Ravenous Hydra is another one that's interesting. Now, the way that this is worded, and, you know, I do want to pick it up, so I don't want to go over an hour. If you look at Ravenous Hydra, it has some wording here. Can only hit each target once per attack or ability. Now, that's interesting because it says ability. Do abilities trigger Ravenous? Because you can do it on range now. Can you hit someone with a Kaisa W and trigger Ravenous? So it attacks deal extra physical damage to other nearby enemies once per attack or ability. Now, it doesn't trigger off of periodic damage. Okay, so that kind of makes sense. So like a Darius Bleed or something would not trigger this multiple times. But I'm just wondering, like with Hurricane, I don't think a lot of people are going to get Hurricane, but so this would not work with Hurricane or like a Sivir Boomerang or something. Obviously, that'd be like mega OP if you could throw a Sivir Boomerang and like each target that got hit splashed. So that's probably what it means if it applies to abilities. That's pretty crazy if it does. I didn't think of it applying to abilities. I thought it was just auto attacks. But this might just be the best sort of go-to. Now, I don't know if Gensu's would trigger this once either. It says once per attack or ability. It doesn't say on hit. It just says attacks deal this. So, I don't know. But if you need a defensive item, if you want something like that, maybe you could get this on ADC for 3,300. So, after you have your core items, your Kraken, all that kind of stuff. Now, Kraken does scale extremely well with attack damage, right? You have a 0.3 that converts over to true damage. So, that's a lot, I think. So it's not a total waste to get attack damage with that build. Ability haste could be useful. It's like about 15% CDR, give or take. An Omni Vamp is very good. So that means it's physical damage and magic damage, just anything that you want. So this is obviously, I think this is going to be the replacement item for Gunblade to some extent. Which could actually be pretty good on Katarina and Akali because that's going to give them some wave clear. And if abilities trigger it especially, now that would be sick with Katarina too, right? If you come in and ult and then it just like, one ult keeps triggering it on everybody over and over again. That's probably why they have it. Or like Akali, does her little like Q and like hits 3 people and, all of that nut craziness. So I don't know. I wasn't even thinking of it triggering off of abilities, but it says ability here. So I don't know. But anyways, as far as ADCs are concerned, I think that this could be, maybe you get this even earlier. Maybe you just go like Kraken, Gensu's this. Maybe you just get the Tiamat early. Like you could even get this just for wave clear early and just sit on it. The new Tiamat, which gives you some nice wave clear, and then change it into something later. I don't know, but I feel like this can fit in really well with a lot of different builds. I think this is going to replace like your Bloodthirster or your Death's Dance and a lot of like ADC builds that want lifesteal, but it also gives them like pretty nice wave clear. So I feel like this is going to be really strong. I just don't know how it fits in with like the Kraken type of thing. If you go for something that's not Kraken, I guess, if you're not an attack speed champ, and maybe you're going for the thing that gives you like the free dash so you can avoid hooks or something like that. And then you don't want to go for Gensu's. I don't know. But I feel like that's going to be like some kind of defensive hybrid item, maybe 3rd or 4th, somewhere in there. That would be a pretty good choice. And then Manamune is interesting. They did lower the cost, 200, so now it's only 2,600. They had it at 28 the last time I looked at the PBE. On the Manamune itself, So before you transform it, it only has a 2% AD conversion. So I feel like it's pretty bad until you transform it. But you can just get it early for like 400 gold, and then just transform it as like your third or your fourth item, and just let it sit in your inventory and just kind of do its thing and just give you some mana over time. And then once you complete it, I think it's worth it when it's Mirror Mana. It just sucks when it's mana immune. But you don't have to make it mana immune. You can just sit on the tier for 400, and that's probably fine early on. So now it goes to the 3% bonus AD based on your total mana. So that's probably going to give you, if you have like 1500 mana, like 45 AD. So it's probably going to be like an 80 AD item, which is pretty rare. A lot of the 80 items are like 60 or less. The mythics are all 60. So that's pretty nice. And now it's 4% of your maximum mana at all times instead of 6% of your current mana. So especially if you're running lower on mana, if you're below like 50% of your total mana whenever you get into a fight or something, that's going to be a lot more. So I think this might make people want to get this, but I think it'll be you sit on tier and then you transform this like third or fourth item. I think will be how people progress that build. So overall, that could be pretty good. Works very well with Gensus. It can double proc off the Gensus. The large amount of AD also works really well with the Kraken that scales, converts your AD over to true damage. So I think that'll be pretty good. And I believe on hits apply to towers too, so that can help you crack towers faster as well. Okay, last few here just really quickly, and then we're pretty much out of time. Ozamux, I think, is 15% Omnivamp. I believe it was 10 before. Maybe I'm misremembering that, but that is, if you remember from my mage video, what I think will be the best mage item on a lot of champs, where it sort of stacks up and you do 15% extra damage, and it gets converted over to true damage after 5 seconds in combat. Super powerful. I think it'll be really good. Archangels, I believe, got nerfed really hard. It's now 3% of your mana gets converted over to AP, so I think that might gut that item. They were testing it at 5% of your max mana to AP, so you're going to lose about 30 AP off of that. So maybe you still get it. Maybe it is still efficient once you get to Archangels. So maybe you just get tier and just sit on it for like 20 or 25 minutes and then convert it over. We'll see. Eclipse they nerfed, so now it's 10% of the maximum HP. That's the one where if you attack people with 2 different attacks and abilities within like 1.5 seconds, you trigger this. And it has like a 6-second cooldown for melee. So it used to do 15% of their max health. Now it only does 10%. And they took away the shield. It has no base shield for ranged anymore. And it has a much longer cooldown, 12% for ranged. Oh, sorry, my, I don't know how long the video thing's been doing that, but we're basically done. Looks kind of crazy with the slideshow there. There we go. There we go. So anyways, decent nerf. It'll probably still be pretty good. And then Lichbane, they released some new information, or I found some information about this. Now it's 150% of your base AD, and it used to be 75%. So that's a massive buff for like if you rush it fairly early. And it has a 0.6 AP ratio on it, which is very good. But it has a 2.5 second cooldown now instead of 1.5 seconds. So it's not going to be as good on champs that want to spam stuff like Cassiopeia or Rise. Things that have like machine gunning out spells, which is probably a good thing. It might be OP on those champs. But that does make it a lot better, potentially, for taking towers and things like that, for things like TF and those types of champs. Now, they did remove the move speed on it, which sucks, and they got rid of the mana on it, but they lowered the cost by 250. So it's okay, but it's not great. And then the Randuins, they ended up making it a 60-second cooldown again. They had been testing it with a 20-second cooldown on the active, that's the slow and things like that. So in a really long fight, maybe you could trigger it twice, or you could run around and, you know, skirmish and just constantly trigger it if you have a lot of uptime on your CC, someone like a Nautilus or a Leona or something like that. And they took off 2% damage reduction per 1,000 health. So it used to do 7% damage reduction, physical damage reduction for every 1,000 health, and now it does 5%. So that's pretty significant as well. But I still think it'll be pretty good just because it lowers the AD of everybody that you hit with the slow by 10%, and it lowers the crit damage by 20%. So it could be good, but once again, if all the ADCs are going Gensus, then it may not matter that you lower their crit. Although lowering their crit might lower their on-hit damage, right? So if they have 40% crit on paper, even though they can't crit you with Gensus, it might lower their crit percentage down to 20, which would take off 50 of their on-hit damage. So maybe it is still pretty good. But Anyways, that's going to be it. So I just wanted to keep you up to date with everything that's going on the PBE, share some of my thoughts with you about some of the crazy, I think, meta innovations in the jungle and with ADC that I've just kind of thought about over the last couple of weeks. Share with you kind of the grave news about supports. Maybe they buff some aspects of this, but we'll see. Anyways, that's going to be it. Thank you very much. Have a good day. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.